Hello and welcome to day 2 of the Public Sector Debate Competition. I'm Tamika Gunmighty, Communications Specialist here at the Transformation Implementation Unit and host for this match today. This is our 4th staging of the Public Sector Debate Competition, and we are happy that you have joined us, whether here at 6 Saxthorpe Avenue or online via our social media platforms. This year's competition got off to a great start yesterday. If you are just joining us, remember you can catch up on the exciting matches either on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. Continuing the action this afternoon, we have with us the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, playing against the Jamaica National Heritage Trust, and they will be debating the MOOT. Be it resolved that flexible work arrangements should be standardized across the public sector. Should be an interesting one. I know we are all excited to get started, but before we do, we'll have the teams introduce themselves, starting with the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lydia Heron. I am from the Executive Office of the Honorable Aubin Hill at MIC.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valencia Jacobs. I work within the HR department within the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deshana Douglas, and I work within the MSME division at MIC.
Thank you so much to the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We now turn our attentions to our opposition side, the Jamaica National Heritage Trust, as they introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Felicia Dawson.
My name is Abigail Tennant.
My name is Gleson Dunn.
Thank you so much, Team Opposition. Our adjudicators for today's match are our partners from the Jamaica Association for Debating and Empowerment, JADE. We'll ask the judges to introduce themselves.
A pleasant afternoon, everyone. My name is Javon Downey, and I'll be serving as the chair adjudicator for this match.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashana Jarrett, and I'll be your wing adjudicator for the match.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Najani Stewart, and I will be the second of your wing adjudicators for this match.
Thank you so much to our judges. Teams are familiar with the rules, so I'll turn over to the judges. All the best to both teams.
All right, so good afternoon again. You're already briefed with the rules, but just a quick reminder. So in your allotted speaking times, which varies from 7, 6, and 5 minutes, your first and last minutes are protected time. That means you cannot be asked. POIs will indicate when you are exiting and re-entering protected time by a ding of the bell. When you have utilized the total allotment of your time, we'll ding the bell twice, and after which you're given a further 15 seconds to wrap up, and then we'll ding the bell continuously to indicate that we have stopped listening and you should exit the stage. When we get to the cross-examination period, I'll further elaborate on the rules. With all of that said and out of the way, let's welcome the first speaker on side proposition. Hear, hear.
Honorable adjudicators, worthy opponents, and engaged audience, good afternoon. I rise as first speaker on the proposition bench to affirm the motion before this House. Be it resolved that flexible work arrangements should be standardized across the public sector. I'll be presenting our implementation framework, discussing cost of living, time reallocation, productivity, and national growth. The second speaker will dig deeper into the socio-economic impacts on a deeper level, while the third speaker will take us across the finish line. So what are flexible work arrangements, FWAs? According to the International Labour Organization, it refers to systems that allow adjustments in the time and the location or the pattern of work, really. It includes telecommuting, which is like some days at work or some days remote. Then you have the staggered work hours, which is like earlier in the day or later in the afternoon. And then you have the compressed work weeks, which is really and truly shorter work week. This helps to balance the operational needs and worker well-being and productivity. The Oxford Dictionary defines standardized as to cause something to conform to a standard. Within this context, standardized means to have a unified national framework with core guidelines and principles that all public sector bodies must follow. In 2014, Jamaica passed the Employment Miscellaneous Provisions Act. This act amended outdated laws such as the SHOP Act, the Holiday with Pay Act, removing the rigid 9 to 5, Monday to Friday work week requirement, meaning we now have legal authority to introduce FWAs across the workforce, including the public sector. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of Jamaica issued formal remote work guidelines through the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. They also reported that 92% of ministries maintain 80% of operational efficiency. What we are proposing now is nothing new. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but to standardize it across the whole entire public sector, with equity, proper structure, and oversight for every organization to benefit. How will this work? Well, the agencies will use a rotational model that is tailored to their unit, depending on the size and the job description of preferred flexible days and FWAs. Managers and supervisors will also rotate strategically. Departments will also establish sensitization protocols to prevent overlapping and understaffing during peak hours. Some key performance indicators and also weekly reporting and digital oversight tools will be used to manage the output. The Data Protection Act of 2020 stated that public sector body must manage sensitive information, even when remote work is at play, with encrypted platforms and internal audit. So that means flexible doesn't mean reckless. Public servants are being crushed economically. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica 2023 data explain that transport raised by 16.8% in 1 year, and that the fuel imports climbed by 11%, costing the nation more in foreign exchange. Jamie, an IT officer, commutes daily from Portmore to New Kingston, spending on average $12,000 monthly at the cheapest rate on transportation. If all public servants were privy to FWAs, they could cut commuting costs by 20 to 40% monthly. They could also help to reduce the fuel consumption, helping Jamaica to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal 13. They can cut back on aftercare and spend quality time with their families. They could redirect these savings into higher education for their kids, focus on professional courses for themselves. How can the sector expect 100% from employees when they are burnt out? I've said that?
How can you account for...
Use the microphone, please.
How can you account for those that are already working or have any sort of flexi time that are still being able to come in twice a week from work?
Okay, so it's supposed to standardize it across the public sector. So if they're already privy to that, then it's okay for the rest of the public sector to also be privy to such preference. The Jamaica Productivity Center also reported that Jamaica's workforce productivity growth was only 1.3% pre-pandemic, and the flexible workers are 70% more productive than fully on-site workers. This is totally understandable. Imagine waking up 4:30 in the morning, rushing to reach your work in bumper-to-bumper traffic, only to do so again in the next episode when going home. Then having to also tend to your family, they are burnt out. They will surely affect affect that productivity for each individual. Standardizing FWAs will, 1, reduce Kingston and St. Andrews centric congestion, and 2, encourage rural retention by allowing remote work from parishes like Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, and St. Mary. Madam Speaker, we firmly affirm the motion. Standardized FWAs will help to alleviate financial burdens, increase productivity, modernize, and humanize the public sector. The question is not whether we should standardize flexible work. The question is, why haven't we done so already? I thank you.
All right, so we thank the first proposition speaker for a very fiery opening to debate, and we now invite, rather, the first opposition speaker to do the same. Hear, hear.
There should be one consistent set of rules or policy on how flexible work is handled across all government agencies in the public sector. Honorable Chairperson, esteemed judges, worthy opponents, attentive audience, good afternoon. We, the opposition, firmly rejects the MOOT that flexi-work arrangements should be standardized across the public sector. Let us be clear, our argument is not against flexibility itself. We acknowledge its value if applied appropriately. What we oppose is a blanket standardization of such arrangement across a sector as diverse as the public sector. The Divisional Director of Industrial Relations and Labor and Social Security, Gillian Carrodus, defines flexi-work arrangements as it relates to that non-standard work engagement, characterized by a variation of work schedule, relates to time, number of hours worked, number of days worked, which can be negotiated by the employee with their employees. My opponent, if this arrangement is standardized, can we still call arrangement flexible? Standardization refers to applying a uniform policy or system across the departments without deviations. Currently, most government agencies now have the option to offer flexi time, but doesn't. But how can we justify imposing a standard system across without accessing it to the public sector? Across mean uniformly or comprehensively applied, and through in this process right now, the public sector, regardless of the type of work, departments of the function, or the operational needs of the company. The public sector refers to all agencies and institutions government-related, regulated. We exist to provide service and implement policies on behalf of the Jamaican people. My teammates and I are here to oppose this MOOT using 5 points. FWA is an option or responsibility to the public, and my second speaker will highlight its flexibility, productivity, and the classes of standardization. My third speaker will come and bring the baton to the finish line. Let's begin. Flexible work arrangement has gained popularity for the better of work-life balance over schedule among employees. Smith 1997 stated that the history of FWA dates back centuries when artisans and craftsmen could work from home. The Industrial Revolution resulted in a standardized work scheme with rigid office structures. In 1968, flexi-time was introduced to Germany to alleviate commuting issues. In 1972, the tech company HP became the first company to introduce flexi-time in the United States of America. Up until now, it is not standardized. It remains an option. The work in Latin America and the Caribbean states that flexi-work arrangements began to develop in Europe, with Finland being the pioneer in 1986, Northern Ireland 2003, New Zealand 2007. Up until now, not standardized. It remains an option. The trend since has gained traction as the wave of change towards flexibility with time. Speaking of a de-standardization of the workday, in the Caribbean, Jamaica created a labor reform committee that recommended the implementation of flexi-work arrangement in 1996 as a strategic method to modernize the labor market and remain competitive with global best practices. It was implemented through the Act passed, as my opponent says, in 2014, allowing for adjustment of time and place, including work, staggered hours, freedom to choose end and start days, and a compressed work week. Along with Jamaica, Barbados also introduced a policy for flexi-work arrangements in 2021. Just like the United States, Kingdom, Finland, and all the other developed countries, this arrangement continues to be an option where the worker has the right to request while allowing the employee the right to accept, reject, or negotiate. My opponents, whose rights do you want to take away? Yours or your employer's? So far, none of the countries reported by Ellen and Claire of 2022 that has given workers the right of flexi working arrangements has made it a standardized policy. The Flexi Work Arrangement Act of 2014 was never designed to enforce standardization. It exists to provide options, not obligation. It is not a one-size-fits-all. They are implemented at the discretion of employers based on operational needs and nature of the business or entities for the benefit of the staff. Let us keep it that way. The truth is that flexible work arrangement is very important, but according to the OECD, while 65% of members, sure. Absolutely not. Moving on. But according to OECD, while 65% of countries has implemented these regulations, 59% of those cases, the individual ministries designed and implemented these regulations, resulting in a variation of discrepancies with options just dropping left and right. But at the end of the day, other than the fact that it will be nice, the government cannot and will not choose to lose. Moving on. Or responsibility to the public. The Jamaican Flexible Agreement Act of Green Paper 2001 indicate that flexi-time involves a traditional 40 work week where employees can alter their times at which they start the end day. But at this time, there's a core time at which all employees are expected to be at work during the day because of service to the public. Let us remember that our core function of the public service is to serve the public. These are not privately owned companies running down profits. These are understaffed, underpaid, poor like a church small companies that are there to support and protect and respond to the needs of the people, often in real time. Now we know our grandmother now took up the phone and called Water Commission for her to tell the operator to click 4. She wants to speak to customer service. She'll go down a crossroads because she needs to speak to somebody and look them in the eye and ask them, why my light bill costs $40,000 and me alone live? It don't make sense. While my opponents do have valid points, flexibility in the public sector often more determined by service delivery needs more than individual employee preference. The truth is that essential service of many nature of the public service jobs limit just how much flexibility can realistically be offered without affecting the public service accessibility. We cannot standardize flexible work arrangements across the public sector without risking delays, disconnect, or even denial in the same service that the very people we are meant to serve. The work must remain grounded in function and not standardization. My opponents, flexible work hours as its work arrangement has its merit. I'm begging for my head of entity right now to revisit the idea of flexibility by regulating it, but mandating a standard one-side approach across the public sector that is as diverse as our public sector is too much. What we need to do is implement policies that should be adaptable by allowing each agency to determine the most suitable work arrangement that aligns with their service delivery objectives. I thank you.
All right. So we want to thank the first speaker and side opposition for her contributions to this debate. We now enter the first period of cross-examination, and this is where we allow side opposition to pose questions to side propositions, and then we'll flip the arrangement and have side proposition asking questions of side oppositions. Be reminded that you're limited to 3 questions that is capped at 10 seconds each, and your responses are limited to 30 seconds. Also, just a guide, please ask a question. Don't lead with a statement. Get straight into the question because of your time constraints. Opposition, go ahead.
First question.
Please utilize the mic.
Sorry. Do you have flexible work arrangements at your job?
Thank you so much for that question. And yes, we do have flexible arrangements at our job.
Awesome. And is everybody afforded this opportunity?
And no, and that's why we are arguing the point that it should be standardized so all public servants have access.
Why is it
all right, so you have to give them the 30
so
second.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, so now your final question.
Okay. The government is now pushing the rationale for team engagement and team building activities and motivation. But how do you engage workers in a meaningful way that when you have 100 employees and they're all on different schedules based on the flexibility or the flexible work arrangements?
Okay, so just like the Sexual Harassment Act, no 2 MBAs will have the same policy. That is why we are saying that it should be standardized across the public sector. So depending on your job description, the organization, and the employees, they'll be able to tailor that to the specific job description and the employees themselves, so that work can still be achieved while burnout will not be a problem.
All right, so we thank side proposition for their opposition rather for their questions, and now we'll entertain the questions from side proposition.
it more impractical to keep outdated systems in place while expecting modern results?
Absolutely not, but we should also ask or tailor the regulations based on the positions or the jobs or the different departments within the ministries.
That's what we just said.
Ask a question, yeah.
We should regulate. If FAAs is good enough for the private sector, why shouldn't why shouldn't it be inducted more within the public sector?
We must first acknowledge that FAAs aren't standardized in the private sector, right? It remains an option. So though there can be more, as we said, we're not against flexibility, we're saying that it should not be standardized right throughout.
All right, so I proposition your final question.
Okay. Tell me why you think that it should not be standardized across the public sector.
We will
All right, so we thank the teams for an engaging period of cross-examination.
Esteemed adjudicators, worthy opponents, and guests, a pleasant afternoon to you all. Just to make one note on what the side opposition had said regarding standardization. Standardization doesn't mean identical implementation. It means uniform guidelines that each department can tailor. So based on the type of department, the nature of the work, you can tailor it to accommodate your staff. All right, so let me see the hands of those who sit at the edge of their bed in the morning, wondering, do I need this job? Should I call in sick? Or take 5 more minutes? That just turns into an hour? How many of us feel burned out by the heavy workloads? Feel like work has become our life? Days when we feel we are not performing as we should? Or our day-to-day expenses and not enjoying parenthood because we think that earning an income is just enough to take care of a child? What about the special moments in their lives? According to the research done by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, flexible work arrangement was initially created to improve workers' productivity, enhance work-life balance, job redundancies, and adaptability to global economy. After all, the public sector is known for its bureaucratic rigidity. Flexible work arrangement, it is not just a perk, it is an equalizer. Standardizing flexible work arrangements across the public sector opens opportunity to more diverse talent. The public sector does compete with the private sector for top talent. Let's talk talent for a second. The new generation of workers isn't waiting around for old systems to catch up. They are choosing workplaces that offers flexibility, freedom, and respect. If the public sector remains rigid and outdated, we lose the next generation of workers to the private sector or even abroad. Standardizing flexibility helps government entities to compete with the world of changing work. Standardization can facilitate the diverse needs, including those of caregivers, students, and individuals with disability. Students who do not benefit from their release. Imagine having a newly employed employee who is attending university but cannot benefit from the day release, and they contribute tremendously to the work of the department. Are we really going to let that worker slip through our fingers? Think about it. What if we offered a compressed work week to them where they can still earn a living and attend school with no hindrance? Aren't we the same person who says education is the key to success? What about our disabled persons? Or if our employees do become disabled, are they being treated fairly? Are we really reinforcing the Disabilities Act that was created to enhance the welfare of persons with disability? Think about that as well. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown that flexible work arrangement is not only feasible, but preferable. Even during lockdowns, the public sector was able to continue providing essential services because of its swift adoption. We even said COVID-19 was becoming the new normal. Technology is evolving, people. Come on, we cannot depend on old systems. We need to catch up. Standardizing flexible work arrangement increases government's efficiency and resilience for future crises. It ensures service continuity in unexpected conditions, whether it is another pandemic, a natural disaster, or even transportation strikes. We, the proposition team, believe that standardizing flexible work arrangements across the public sector improves equity, boosts productivity, strengthens recruitment, and prepares our institution for sustainability. It is not only an appealing notion, it is an essential step towards modern, inclusive, and resilient public sector. I urge you to think flexible. I thank you.
All right, so we thank the second proposition speaker for her submission, and now make welcome the second opposition speaker. Hear, hear.
Honorable adjudicators, earnest debaters, and cherished supporters, good afternoon. I, being in agreement with the stance that has been so well established by my first speaker, will continue in the same manner on the matters at hand. Two of the key areas were discussed by my first speaker, and I will highlight three more points: flexibility, productivity, and the classification of standardization. On that breath, let us continue. Flexible work arrangements, FWAs, in Jamaica are not a brand new concept, as discussions and plans stated in 1997, they started in 1997 and continued throughout the 2000s, when Jamaica was rocked by the 2008 recession. On November 25th, 2014, the Flexible Work Arrangement Act was finally passed. It is now April 2025, and since the passing of the Act, only a few departments and agencies in the public sector have implemented it. Moreover, the law has yet to see any real form of regulations enacted. Let's go a step further. In Jamaica's law, it only identifies 4 FWAs, namely part-time work with benefits, telecommuting, flexi-time, and a compressed work week. This then forces the general public to assume that other forms of FWAs do not apply in the Jamaican public sector context. This immediately limits the extent in which the law allows us to be flexible. Flexibility refers to no forms of restrictions. In that event, employees can then, within their right, choose any particular way to conduct their duties. But my opponents, we must simply understand that the nature of one's job functions may innately inhibit the individual such flexibilities, and we can look at that of cleaning attendants, telephone operators, and teachers. If we now make these jobs operate as such, not at this time, this may hamper the performance of the company. Even the law takes note of this, stating that flexi work will not benefit every organization and should only be implemented by those which stand to reap benefits. However, if it becomes standardized across the entire public sector, entities who will not benefit will not be legally prompted to enforce these laws and deal with the repercussions thereof. Also, under standardized FWAs, some persons who work during peak interaction hours may now be relegated to the brunt of the contact portions of the day. When we look at all of this, we see where this will be inequality, imbalance, and in plain Jamaican terms, bad mind. At its core, FWAs must be a mutual agreement between all parties. Therefore, if an employee requests an FWA, that does not automatically give them the right to operate as such. And if their schedule does not fit within the operations of the business, they can be denied. This could lead to tension and animosity within the organization. So much for flexibility. In any discussion dealing with the standardizing of FWAs, we must look at its impact on productivity. Yes, some productivity levels increase in FWAs, but we are failing to highlight that these were often conducted on small-scale levels under employed schedule shift systems and mainly outside of the Jamaican public sector. Having all public sector individuals under the law partaking in FWAs would cause confusion and conflict within the society and within organizations. If we were to take FWAs at face value, multiple persons within the same entities or the same departments could choose to have varying different work arrangements because that best suits them. This then produces difficulties in liaising with each other in workable timeframes, leading to misunderstandings and misupdates. Additionally, this will negatively affect how the public conducts business. Remember, we're talking about the public sector who helps the public. Varying work schedules could lead to issues of unreliable or sporadic service. This slows down processing times, effectively placing the public and other public sector entities at an awkward position, eventually causing a domino effect throughout the entire public sector system. There's a saying that with government, you always have to go through extended waits and red tapes. If we standardize FWAs, will this not further increase it? I digress. Under productivity, we must also acknowledge that every occupation is not results-only work environments. Some jobs require supervision. Under standardization, how will these jobs now be monitored and their performance now be evaluated? Furthermore, supervisors and managers will have more challenges, such as no autonomy in their preference of FWAs, an increase in their workload, being unable to properly oversee their staff, and an inability to coordinate group training sessions, putting more pressure on the managers. But, a positive is an opportunity for overtime, but it only benefits them. And decreasing benefits equals decreasing productivity. Minimum wages will no longer gain incentives such as overtime, not at this time, because reduced hours means you'll be earning less, affecting employers' pension contributions, long-term planning, and confidence in their roles. And let's not even talk about leaves. Although workers will still be entitled to their sick, departmental, and vacation leaves, these leaves will now take a longer time to accumulate before they can be taken. Because clearly, if you're working less days, you would earn your vacation leave at a slower pace, as said by Gillian Carrodos. Employees, too, must be mindful that with any work arrangement, complications can arise. As mentioned earlier, once they enter into contracted agreements, if these agreements no longer serve them, they cannot just switch to another time as they deem fit, as agreement was mutual amongst all parties and must now go through the due process for any negotiations or reconsideration. But be mindful, as my first speaker said, the government will not choose to lose, and if the government lose, you lose your work. Lastly, and by no means least, after all has been discussed, the main issue stands as it regards to the standardization of flexible work arrangements across the public sector. And that is, how can we standardize what is called flexible? Who has the final authority on what is to be standard? Who gets to call the shots? The parliamentarians? Is it the minister, the public sector entity itself, or the employee? Or are we keeping what the law already has in place? And what really is being standardized? The opportunity to standardize the option of employees doing FWAs, or the employees standardizing the choice and manner of the flexible arrangements? Does the standardization go for the individual, for the job position, or for the department the position is in? To the fellow public, can you really standardize something and call it flexible? The essence of flexibility is a choice, adaptable, and in context. The moment we try to standardize it by creating fixed rules, procedures, and limits, we strip it of very meaning, like putting a leash on a bird and calling it free. My opponent, how about we first seek to regulate this act and ask the necessary questions before they're further tying up ourselves in more red tape in the name of standardization? Thank you.
All right, so we thank the second opposition speaker for her contributions to this debate. We will now enter into our second and final period of cross-examination, where once again, team opposition will pose 3 questions to proposition, and proposition will do likewise. Team opposition.
Okay. So, as I mentioned in my speech about supervisors, I would like to ask, when does the supervisor get to rest? And the government is trying to cut down their wage bill, but implementing standardization does not affect the same bill they are trying to cut?
The supervisor will actually get more rest because they will be within a flexible work arrangement. Rather than working 5 days a week, they'll be able to get more rest.
Okay. The second part of my question was, if the government is trying to cut down their wage bill, wouldn't implementing standardization affect the same bill they are trying to cut?
Cut down the wage bill and implementing standardization affecting it? No.
Okay.
Final question.
Are you willing to accept service delays, bureaucratic bottlenecks, or reduced face-to-face support as collateral damage in the vision of fairness?
That one, FWAs will never affect those things because it's not as if though it's not already in place. The bill was already passed. The thing is for it to be standardized across all public sector.
All right, so we thank opposition for their questions, and now we invite proposition to pose their questions.
All right, so you mentioned about cutting down persons their leaves to accumulate the days. Could you expound on why?
Okay, so you hearing me? Okay, so there is 110 days that one has to reach for the ability to gain their leaves. However, if you're doing such as a compressed work week, this is going to limit the amount of time that you will actually get to have these leaves. So if you're doing 3 days a week, you're now going to have to wait a longer time before you can get it.
Question.
Question. You're saying that it will how can you prove that it will cut down leave? If it is staggered time and the time you're working within the allotted time, just like with a 9 to 5, just to compensate for a 9 to 5. So you will be working
As I said, we're not talking about hours, we are talking about days. It is the amount of days that one works, not the amount of hours one works in a day.
Final question from proposition.
My fellow opponents, are you aware that the bill was already passed for the flexible work arrangement?
Yes, I am aware, as was mentioned. However, it is passed but not regulated.
All right, so we thank
There's a difference.
We thank both teams for an interesting period of cross-questioning, and at this point, the debate will transition into a 1-minute break to allow for the reply speakers to put the finishing touches on their speeches, and then we will resume with the opposition submission. That 1 minute starts now. All right, so that is time, and now we invite to take the floor the opposition reply speaker.
Good afternoon, esteemed judges, worthy opponents, and attentive audience. The proposition's case, while passionate, claims that flexible work arrangements should be standardized across the public sector, but they have failed to address the deep structural realities of the public sector. They come here confusing flexibility with rigid classification, disguised as progress. Yes, the arrangement has been implemented in some public sector entities, but success has been inconsistent and very context dependent. According to a study done by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in 2010, out of 6 organizations surveyed, only 3 of the arrangements were found successful. In fact, in 2 of the cases, the arrangements led to dissatisfaction, a decrease in pay, and even redundancies. Do you want that for yourself? I don't. For clarity, my teammates and I are for flexible work arrangements. It is a great asset for the public sector and should remain flexible and optional. The Flexible Work Arrangement Act clearly states that this was designed to be an option for the benefit of the staff, a tool that should be used in the right context that doesn't take away from the growth and productivity of the company. Judges, Finland, one of the pioneers of flexible work arrangements, was voted the happiest country in the world for the 8th consecutive year, according to the World Happiness Report. You know why? They chose to take the rights of their workers into consideration. In 2020, they increased the options of flexible work arrangement for the employees, noting the importance of an even more practical work-life balance. The proposition touts improved productivity, yet according to a Jamaica Gleaner article published April 2, 2025, the Auditor General's Office warned that inconsistent remote work practices during COVID-19 delayed critical audits and created gaps in service delivery. Productivity gains are highly uneven across ministries. Research from the International Labour Organization states that productivity depends on the job type, the employee support, and infrastructural needs. The private sector's flexibility that you mentioned comes with performance-linked firing and hiring. Is that what you're asking the public sector to do? This does not say job security. The Jamaica Observer, March 17, 2025, reported 72% of frontline workers expressing resentment towards flexible benefits enjoyed only by administrative staff. That is the plain truth. Standardization risks sowing division within the public service workforce. In 2018, 42% of public sector workers in the UK reported using flexible work arrangements ranging from flexi-time, compressed hours, to term-only schedules. Working patterns varied across public sector roles, such as police officers, nurses, and midwives reported the least flexibility, while local and national government administrators and teaching support assistants reported the most, thus breeding resentment. It is not just a Jamaican thing. Without a doubt, the negative aspects, such as not having to earn or a decrease in overtime, puts a damper on the pockets of employees. The delayed accumulation of vacation, departmental, or sick days, which comes out of the already dampened pockets of new employees, because they have not reached the 110 days required before being entitled to leave with pay. The pressures of work and feeling burdened, it may now be engendered to a lack of efficiency in completing duties. Persons may also be forced to miss days of work in order to alleviate the weight of the workload or deal with illnesses, leaving their duties growing and incomplete. My opponents, it is not a good look. The largest occupations within the public sector, healthcare professionals, security personnel, and those in education are often jobs with working patterns outside of the typical 9 to 5 in these flexible areas. And then you come here and preach flexibility, adding a word like standardization to the mix. What you will get is oil on water and not a tall glass of lemonade. We cannot encourage employees to choose flexibility and then turn around and standardize it. It cancels out each other. As my first and second speaker said, the essence of flexibility is that you have an option to choose what works best and not that a standardized measure be applied. We have to go back to the drawing board where this is concerned. If countries like West Germany, United States, and others have not standardized flexi work arrangement, then why does our still developing country want to standardize it? In closing, while flexibility should be encouraged where suitable, rigid standardization across the public sector is reckless, unfair, and economically burdensome. We should leave flexibility decisions to ministries, departments, and agencies based on operational needs. One size does not fit all. I thank you.
All right. So we thank side opposition for closing out the debate and that side of the house. And now to close out the debate in totality, we invite the proposition reply speaker. Here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable judges, adjudicators, fellow opponents, guests, good afternoon. First, let me make a point clear that my opponents, I think they got it wrong. You said COVID-19 showed where there was an area where there was low productivity. If you can recall, FWA was the life jacket during COVID. Nobody could go out, no work was being done, so that was the option that we took. And this is why that we know that it is feasible and it can work. If standardization is an option, why isn't the public sector privy to that option? My learned opponent, in this day and age, I cannot fathom why you say that flexible work arrangement should not be standardized across the public sector. My team has shown where research has shown where employers and employees within the sector benefits from it. It is a win-win situation. During the COVID pandemic, we all had to flex and pivot in order to get the job done. My second speaker would have elaborated on the socio-economic benefits, which took into account work-life balance. Broken vessels cannot produce efficiently and effectively. The FWA plays a vital and pivotal role in the production and the productivity. Mr. Speaker, my opponents have stated that flexi-time affects operational output. Studies have, and this is wrong, studies have contradicted this by recording an 80% increase in this area in instances where flexi, it remained operational output remains stable. The public sector, in its present state, must evolve for modernization to take place. Standardization of the FDA is undoubtedly our best opportunity to do so. My opponent said that it will be difficult to supervise and coordinate. With every mandate, a strategic system or approach must be implemented so that activities, the task-oriented activities can be achieved and measured. So if you're saying that supervisors cannot, Lord, I can leave that. Okay. All right, activities, workers may be difficult to supervise and coordinate in their activities. Strategic system must be put in place to monitor through technology. Activities must be task-oriented and goal-oriented and can be easily measured. And bear in mind that careful assessment must be done to draft positions that needs limited supervision. All right. Flexi-work arrangement, I conclude. Flexi-work arrangement is the future, and the future is now.
All right, so we thank the proposition reply speaker for closing out the debate in totality.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very topical one. Be it resolved that flexible work arrangements should be standardized across the public sector. Give the teams a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. The arguments have been made, and now we want to continue the conversation. Viewers, are you for or against the MOOT, flexible standardization of flexible work week across the public sector? The judges will now deliberate and come back to us and let us know who the winner of this match is. So the next person you will hear from is our chair adjudicator, who will let us know the outcome. Stay with us.
Right, welcome back to our audience and our viewers online. The judges have deliberated and the results are in. But just before we get into the results, we want to deliberate or to expound to you what that process of deliberation looked like. Right, so the motion before us read, be it resolved that flexible work arrangements, the teams refer to it as FWA, should be standardized across the public sector. So when we talk about standardizing FWAs across the public sector, proposition's burden of proof in this debate is to show us why exactly should this be the standard. They should tell us the benefits that we derive from FWA and why should we make it a public sector-wide initiative. And on side opposition, they should tell us what are the detracting factors from us implementing it broad-brushed across the public sector. Right. So there were some key ideations that came out in the debate, and unfortunately, as a panel of adjudicators, we felt that there was some convergence in this debate, right? So it kind of limited the pool of arguments that we got and the ideas that were aerated in the match. Let's begin. So let us engage with proposition's idea of standardization. They defined standardization as to conform to a standard or unified framework, and they defined that as making FWAs applicable to every single government public sector entity. So all of the MDAs, all of the ministries, departments, and agencies will have some form of flexible work arrangements embedded within them that is made applicable by they told us the name of the act, by the FWA Act, right, or the Act of Employment, right, that was passed in 2014. So they told us that based on this act, their idea of standardizing flexible work arrangements is to ensure that all of the ministries, departments, agencies, and entities have access to flexible work arrangements. On side opposition, we get this sort of contestation or this sort of idea that standardization includes strict rules and regulations that every department or entity or agents will have to abide by. But that was directly contested and contrasted based on what the proposition explained. The first speaker told us, right, that the implementation of the acts will not be done arbitrarily. The standard that they are upholding on side proposition is that they will make FWAs applicable to all of the ministries, and that will be the standard. Right, so that is what we got coming out of side proposition. On side opposition, they contested it to say something that is standard cannot be flexible because, again, it will require strict rules and regulations that every department and agency will have to be guided by. But proposition addressed that when they told us that in as much as the standard will be that all of the agencies will have access to it, it will ultimately be left up to the agencies to determine the kind of FWAs that they implement, and they gave us a range of FWAs, as we got as well from opposition, to include compressed work week, flexi time, staggered shifts, and things of that nature. So ladies and gentlemen, we as a panel of judges, we accepted that, and we believe that that was the convergence, because we also heard that same idea coming out on side opposition to say, okay, these are the different types of flexible work, and they're saying flexible work is good. The only problem that we have is that it cannot be standardized because of how rigid it is in nature. But ultimately, we felt that both sides were, they said that it should be optional, but ultimately we felt that both sides kind of argued and presented the same points, right? Because in as much as they on opposition are saying it should be optional, they on side proposition, based on how they explained it and contextualized it, did make it optional based on how the specific agency, the specific department, or the specific ministry would implement it across their organization, right? In props world, the standard is that all agencies would benefit from FWA, which does not obtain in the status quo now, and that in and of itself is making it optional. So that's really where the debate turned, and I'll give you the deliberation shortly. So just some general ideas, some general reminders. The role of the reply speaker in a debate of this nature is to listen to the arguments that were put forward by the opponents or by the opposing side, and to engage with them and reinforce the arguments that your team provided and why your arguments are superior. So while we welcome new examples and new explanations, we don't welcome new warrants or new claims entirely. Just reinforce what was already spoken about, right? And also you have to engage with the ideas as they arise in the debate. We know that you have your pre-prepared speeches, but sometimes it requires a little bit of agility and flexibility for us to pivot to say, okay, so we came and we had it from this idea, but the opponents are telling us this specific idea. So, try to engage with what is presented and not just rigidly stick to the script. Engagement helps and it bolsters your chance of being more convincing and being more persuasive, because that is what we are here for at the end of the day, to persuade a panel of adjudicators. So with all of that said, the winner of this match is the team in proposition. They won with 255, and the team in opposition ended the match with 252. So it was a very closely contested match. Thank you, teams. Oh, my apologies. So the best speaker of this match, we thought this person provided the most relevant content and material in the debate, and we did believe as a panel of adjudicators that that was the first speaker on side proposition. My apologies. Yes, so thank you for tuning in, and we invite you to stay tuned for the final match on day 2 in round 1.
Standardization is this, so everybody has to adhere to this measure. But when they're gonna come and say, okay, the standard we're coming with is that we're making it applicable to everybody in the public sector. That's the standard.
So the thing is that in the initial part of getting this meeting, maybe all may understand based on what we had from the workshop, right? We know that we would have immediately not have agreed to what they have said. So they're saying that, okay, this is the standard as option 1, right? So I'm saying, I was thinking, if we contest that they're saying